In this lecture, we're going to learn about namespaces across multiple files. And we are going to be using three classes to illustrate our point here. The first class is going to be a point class, which is going to model a point in our C++ program. If you look here, you're going to see that the class is englobed in a namespace. These are the curly braces delimiting our namespace. And the class is going to live inside, and this is the setup you can do. Please note that what we have here is a header file, and this is the definition of the class. But it is also possible to put some definitions for our member functions in an implementation file or a CPP file. And this is how we can do it. If you look here, we have our namespace here, and inside the namespace we have whatever we need to put in our class definition. We have the definition for the constructors, and we have a destructor here, and this is the setup you really use. If we go down, we're going to see our line class. A line is modeled as a pair of points. We have a starting point, we have an ending point, and if we try to connect these 2 points, we're going to get a line. This is the logic behind how we set up our class here. We have a constructor and we have a function to print information about our line, and we're going to print information about the starting point and the ending point here. Nothing complicated here. We also have an implementation file for our line, and inside our namespace we're going to have the implementation for the constructor here. Just to have some fun, we're also going to put in a cylinder class. The cylinder class is also going to live in a namespace as you see here, and it is going to be englobed by our namespace. And in here we have the definition for our class. We also have a CPP file for this, and we're going to have the definition for our constructor inside. Once we have our namespaces and classes set up like this, we can use them in the main function. And here is a simple example of how you can do that. We're going to include our classes as you see here. And then before we use any constructor, we're going to prefix that with a namespace name. You see here we are saying geom. We have to put the colon to mean that we want to call something that lives in that namespace. Then we're going to do whatever we did before. We have a point class, we create an object of it, and the object is going to be created. We can also create a second object as you see here, and we can print the information, and this is really good. We can also create a line object as you see here. We can print information about that. We can create a cylinder object and call stuff on that object, and this is really going to work. Now that you have seen this, we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and play with this a little more. Okay, here we are in our working folder. The current project is namespaces across multiple files. We're going to grab our template files pretty quick, and we're going to put them in place. And then we're going to open this in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping like we do here. We're going to open up our main CPP file, close the left pane here, or let's let it open because we're going to use it in a minute. Let's clean up a little bit, and we're going to create our point class. We're going to create a header file. We are going to create a CPP file. I am going to put in the code for the header file here. Nothing complicated. You see we are setting up a namespace delimited by these curly braces on line 6 and 22. And then inside we have our point class. We have our member variables mx, my. We have the constructor, which is going to be taking 2 parameters. And we have a printful function, which is going to print information about our point here. Nothing complicated so far. We also have a CPP file as you see here. Again, we have the namespace and we have our stuff inside the namespace. Please note that we have the same namespace across multiple files, and these are not going to be different namespaces. The namespace we have in the CPP file, as you see here, is going to be an extension of the same namespace we have in the header file. Please remember that. Just because they live in different files doesn't mean they are different namespaces. They are still the same namespace. So let's create our line class. Now that the point is done, we're going to say line.h for the header. We're going to say line.cpp for the CPP file. We are going to put in the code for the header file for our line class. Again, nothing complicated. We have our namespace, and inside we have the code for the line class, the declaration and the definition of our class here. We are going to hop over to the CPP file and put in the code for that. And in case I didn't mention it, if you don't want to type all these things I am doing here, you can use the code attached to the resource section of the lecture that you are watching right now. That's going to make things a little easy if you don't want to type this. You're going to have the code here ready to use. Okay, we have our line class in place. We're going to create our cylinder class. Let's do the header file, cylinder.h, and we're going to do cylinder.cpp. We are going to put in the code for a cylinder. Let's do that. You can see the code here if you want to type this. And we are going to put in the implementation for our cylinder class here. This is just the definition of our constructor, and it is englobed in our namespace here. Now that we have everything set up, now we can go in main and use these things. The first thing we need to do in main is to include our classes. We're going to include our point class. Let's do that. Point.h. We're going to include the line class, and we're going to include the cylinder class. Okay, we're done here. Now that we have this, we can head over in the main function and use these things. The first thing we're going to do is to create a point object. So usually we used to say point P1, for example, and say 10 or 20 here. And this is what we did. But you see that this is not working because the point class isn't defined in the global namespace. If we go in the point header, we're going to see that it lives in a namespace called geom. And if we want to create an object with this guy, we need to prefix it with the namespace name. We're going to say geom, and we're going to put a colon. This is going to be valid because now the compiler knows where to find this class here. And this is really cool. We can create another object. Let's do that just for the fun of it. Geom, and we're going to say point, and we're going to say P2 here. Let's use lowercase. And we're going to say 3.5 or 4 and 6.1. Why not? So we can do something like this. Let's use a dot here. And now that we have the objects, we can really do anything we want. We can print information about our point. I think we have a method like that in our point class. Yes, we have. So we're going to say P2 and say printful, and we can do something like this. If we build and run this program, we're going to build with GCC. Let's do that. We are going to see that the build is good as you see here. Let's close the left pane. We don't need it anymore. We can bring up a terminal so that we can build this little guy, can clear and run rooster. And we're going to see information about our points, and this is really cool. We can also create line objects because we have a line class as we see here. So let's do that. We're going to put a separator here. And we're going to say line. And we're going to say geom. And we're going to create a line object. And we're going to say L1. And let's use P1 and P2 to create our line object. We can do that. Because if you go to the constructor of our line object, you're going to see that it's going to take 2 points by reference here. So we're going to pass our 2 points, and this is going to work. We can print information about a line object. As you see here, we have a member function to print information. So let's do that. We're going to say L1 printful, and we're going to print information about this little guy. We can build and run this program. Let's use GCC to do that. The build is going to be good, as you see here. And if we hit enter, we're going to clear, and run rooster. This is going to show information about our point. The line is going from point 1, which is this guy here, to point 2, which is what we have in our code here. And this is really cool. We can copy this separator and create a cylinder object. Just to show you that you can play with these things a little more, we're going to create a cylinder object. We're going to go through the namespace where the cylinder class is living, and the namespace happens to be geom, so that's what we're going to use. We're going to say geom, and we're going to say cylinder, and we're going to say C1. And what do we need to pass to our cylinder when we create it? We need to pass the base radius and the height. Let's pass the base radius as 1.4 and the height to be 10. Why not? After we have this thing declared, we're going to call it. Maybe we can print the volume. Let's see if we have a member function called volume. I think we do. Yes, we do. We are going to say volume, and we're going to say C1 volume. And this is going to give us the volume of our cylinder here. We can build and run this little guy. So let's build with GCC. The build is going to be good. We can clear and run rooster, and we're going to see that our volume is in here. And if you replace these values in and compute the volume of our cylinder here, this is what you're going to get. This is really all I wanted you to see in this lecture, that you can set up namespaces across multiple files. There is really nothing complicated. All you have to do is specify the namespace using the syntax here, and you're going to put whatever you want inside that namespace. Namespaces can span multiple files. This is the message here. For example, we have the geom namespace spanning the header and the CPP file. And all you have to do to use the namespace, as we have seen, is to prefix what you want to call with the namespace name and put colon, as you see here. We are going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we're going to learn about the global namespace. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.